This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. Tonight's the night Michael Dukakis expects to go over the top to clinch a first-ballot victory at next month's Democratic National Convention. It's the night of the final four major primaries: New Jersey, New Mexico, Montana, and the biggest single state primary delegation prize, California. Dukakis' likely lock on the nomination comes as Jesse Jackson again is hinting he wants to be offered the vice presidency. CBS News chief political correspondent Bruce Morton reports now on the windup of presidential primary campaign 88 and the early shape-up of the fall campaign, Dukakis against George Bush.
George Bush and Michael Dukakis both campaigned in California today, both acting as if they had already won their party's nomination. Bush, of course, has, and was stressing hope today.
The Democrats are all running on failure and pessimism. They're talking about pink slips, and we're talking about opportunity.
Dukakis was arguing that on some issues he's the conservative in the race.
This crowd in the White House isn't conservative.
Well, the vice
They
president...
can balance a budget if their life depended on it.
If he sounds as if he were already the nominee, he has reason. It takes 2,082 delegates to win the Democratic nomination. Our CBS News count shows Dukakis with 1,957. And at stake today are 109 more in New Jersey, 314 more in California. Barring stunning upsets, he's in. And our New Jersey exit polling has some other good news for Dukakis. More of his voters there thought he was a strong leader than in earlier primaries. More of his voters were strongly for him. It wasn't always like that. Once, there were 7 candidates.
Congressman Gephardt, he's still up in the air.
Richard Gephardt, a winner in Iowa, victim of perhaps the year's best negative TV ad. Gary Hart, campaigning hard under an Arctic moon in New Hampshire, but never a contender. Paul Simon, a winner only in his home state of Illinois. Bruce Babbitt, who bicycled across Iowa, but ended up back in Arizona. Albert Gore, who did well in the South, but collapsed in the acid rainstorm that was the New York primary. And Jesse Jackson, the longest runner, whose hopes peaked in Michigan and dwindled in 2-man races after that. Dukakis survived.
Dukakis emerged for several reasons. One, he was certainly the most prepared candidate. Secondly, he was the most prosperous candidate. And third, he was the candidate who had the best plan.
Assuming he does wrap up the nomination today, Dukakis' plan, aside from working on his curve, will be to stress broad themes and a positive picture of himself as a problem solver, a family man, somebody who cares about and understands average people.
Dukakis' aides say they're sure Vice President Bush will have to go to negative ads towards Dukakis. They want to get their own positive image out first. Dan?
Bruce, the polls indicate Dukakis with at least a 10-point lead over George Bush. How can that be?
Well, 2 reasons, I think. One, the Republicans haven't started seriously beating up on Dukakis yet. They will, everybody thinks. And second, Vice President Bush's own negatives, the voters with unfavorable opinions of him, have been going up, possibly because people are starting to look at him not simply as Ronald Reagan's loyal helper, but as a man who, in his own right, wants to be president.
And reminding yourself, still a long way to go.
Sure is.
Last night on the CBS Evening News, some Reagan administration officials said they had indications, at least in 1985, that Panama's General Noriega was running drugs, and they implied that George Bush either could or should have known. Today, Bush reiterated in California that the first time he knew conclusively about Noriega was after Noriega's actual indictment this year. I interviewed the Vice President and candidate George Bush a short while ago in preparing for tonight's primary campaign coverage.
There's a lot of rumors floating around about a lot of different people abroad. So I think you ought to be fair in all of this and give credit that when it looked like the evidence was enough to indict, we indicted.
Mr. Vice President and candidate George Bush, speaking of fairness, do you think it's fair or unfair for people, and not all of them Democrats, who say, look, in both the sending of weapons to the Ayatollah and in the Noriega case, one of 2 things was true. Either George Bush was metaphorically asleep at the wheel, or he chose to look the other way when these things were being done.
I think it's unfair, but I'll tell you what I think is fair, Dan. I'll take the credit for that, or the blame, whichever you want. But just be sure to give me plenty of credit then for all the good things. Be sure to give me credit for this arms control agreement we achieved. Be sure to point out that if we'd have listened to Michael Dukakis and Jesse Jackson on the freeze, we never would have achieved this arms control agreement that banishes an entire generation of nuclear weapons.
Even after tonight, Jesse Jackson says he still be running, still campaigning, still prodding to caucus on issues, still interested in being considered for vice president, still eager to go to the convention with maximum power and influence. The Bush campaign considers this to be delightful news. CBS News correspondent Betsy Aaron is traveling with the still alive Jackson Drive.
Finally, when the votes are counted tonight, history will record that the Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, a black man, finished second in the 1988 race for the Democratic presidential nomination.
On this note, I leave you, my friends. We the people keep on winning. We will never surrender.
Can this man, with his overpowering presence and his overpowering ego, accept what he's achieved and constructively move on?
Have you given some thought to running for another office?
No, I considered running for an office that meets the size of my capabilities. That's why I'm running for the presidency.
At first, there were 7 and finally 2. Jesse Jackson ran so hard, winning 13 primaries and caucuses, 991 delegates, as of tomorrow an expected 1,000 plus. And he claims he set the agenda for the whole campaign.
I represent a constituency. I represent congressional districts. I represent states. What do my constituents want?
They want the Jackson agenda. Cut the supply of drugs, increase jobs, social services, register as many people as possible to vote.
I'm pulling the governor and the party in a progressive direction.
Jackson wants his agenda to be the platform. He says he's willing to fight it out on the convention floor if necessary.
It would be foolhardy for the party not to find a way to accommodate what has been not only a great campaign, but a historic crusade on his part.
He's challenging Michael Dukakis on just about every issue. He says he wants to be offered the vice presidency. This scattershot approach gets him attention, creates drama. But up to now, if he knows what he wants, he's refusing specifically to spell it out.
I hope Jesse knows what Jesse wants, because it's going to be very hard for Mike Dukakis and Jesse Jackson to arrive at understandings if Jesse doesn't understand exactly what it is he wants.
So Jackson and Dukakis are talking, struggling to keep the focus on winning in November.
There may be some issues that go to the floor, but I don't see any great divisions within our party.
For Jesse Jackson, there is a consolation. No matter what happens, Jackson will make sure nobody is ever going to say, "Whatever happened to what's-his-name?" Betsy Aaron, CBS News, Los Angeles.
For all the election year talk about stepping up the war on drugs, there are indications tonight of a drug enforcement step backward. CBS News Pentagon correspondent David Martin reports on a boon to drug traffickers, cutbacks in the Coast Guard.
When you look at all the unidentified contacts on the radar screen at the Miami Command Center for the War Against Drugs, you understand why there's so much talk about the need to do more, even bring in the military, to stop drugs from reaching American shores. But what you might not understand is that despite all the talk, the Coast Guard, which is supposed to be one of the lead agencies in intercepting drug runners, has been decimated by a budget cut.
That was outrageous. Now, what we had to do is decommission and close about $43 million worth of Coast Guard ships and aircraft and stations throughout this country.
Nowhere is the gap between rhetoric and reality in the war against drugs more apparent than here at Key West, Florida, where these Coast Guard cutters have actually been taken out of service ahead of schedule because of a lack of money. The cutter Lipan had leaky fuel tanks, and the Coast Guard couldn't afford to fix them.
Even though it's an old ship, we probably could have used it maybe 4 or 5 more years.
The Coast Guard has also had to cut its routine patrols in half, patrols which in the past have accounted for 90% of the Coast Guard's drug busts.
The budget cut has impacted our operations in a way I find frustrating and concerning. Our drug seizure levels have been cut in half also.
There were 5 Coast Guard cutters tied up at the pier in Miami. Only 1 was out on patrol.
The ships and the aircraft aren't doing what they're supposed to do and what they're designed to do and what the taxpayers bought them to do.
Even with its leaky fuel tanks, the now decommissioned Lipan made a contribution to the war against drugs.
We did get underway 4 times and we made 4 busts.
You got underway 4 times and you made 4 busts?
Yes, sir.
But you're never getting underway again?
No, sir. I'm not getting underway anymore.
The budget cuts have been made in the name of a worthy cause, reducing the federal deficit. But that does not change the fact that while Congress is forcing a reluctant military to do more in the war against drugs, the Coast Guard is being forced to do less. David Martin, CBS News, Key West, Florida.
A fatal prognosis today for Salvadoran President Jose Napoleon Duarte after surgery for stomach cancer in Washington. Doctors said the disease has spread to Duarte's liver and is inoperable. His personal doctor says Duarte has only months to live. Still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, reports on two of nature's dangers this spring. Correspondent Richard Roth on Lyme disease and its tiny carrier, the deer tick. And Bob McNamara on the mighty grizzly and the debate on whether it should be protected.
You've been watching me for years now. Don't you think it's time you join me on a Carnival cruise? Come on! More people are taking vacations on Carnival. Because when you take a Carnival cruise, all your shipboard funds included in one terrific price. All your nighttime entertainment's included. All your food's included too. Plus fantastic tropical ports of call. So on your next vacation, take a 3, 4, or 7-day cruise on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
Life's finer pleasures. Happily, some more affordable. Like Grey Poupon Dijon mustard. Created from an original Dijon recipe so fine it even has white wine to enhance fillets, enliven sauces, and dress up salad dressings. So enjoy one of life's finer pleasures.
Pardon me, would you have any Grey Poupon?
But of course, Grey Poupon, one of life's finer pleasures.
When you buy Corning prescription lenses that change, it's like getting free light tints, free medium tints, dark tints, and a range of free sunglasses all in one. Corning lenses that change, the only eyeglasses you'll ever need.
To stack up the Totals vitamin nutrition, it takes almost 3 bowls of Special K.
I'm eating shredded wheat.
You're eating 12 bowls.
Better loosen your girdle, Gloria.
Total has 100% of 9 vitamins and iron and is rich in calcium. That's a stack of nutrition.
In just one bowl.
The best-attended Arab summit in years opened tonight in Algiers. Libyan leader Gaddafi was among the late arrivals. Algeria is calling it the summit of the uprising. Its goal is to find ways to support the Palestinian uprising in Israel's occupied territories. Leaders or representatives of 21 countries and the PLO are there. This week, the anti-Israeli uprising enters its 7th month in the occupied West Bank and Gaza. Correspondent Bob Simon has more on these months that have changed everything and changed nothing.
2,000 Palestinians spend their days elbow to elbow in 100-degree heat 3 miles from the Egyptian border, with no books except the Quran, no radios, no charges, no trials.
Perhaps I'll finish my 6 months in jail without knowing why I had been here.
It's one of the prices Palestinians are paying for their uprising, the loss of their freedom. It's also a loss for Israel, which stakes its claim to international support on grounds of being the only democracy in the Middle East.
We have developed here kind of a schizophrenic democracy. It's a very democratic system for us Jews here, for us Israeli citizens. It's very undemocratic system for the Palestinians.
Despite appeals and protests from Washington, Mubarak Awad, a Palestinian-American activist who advocates dialogue with the Israelis, will be deported next week. The action was ordered by Prime Minister Shamir, who is stonewalling Secretary Schultz and the American peace plan. And yet, the Americans are as generous towards the Israelis as always.
They just passed the foreign aid bill. There was no opposition. I can't see any change in American policy that's come as a result of this. None.
When there is violence directed against Israelis, naturally they have to find some way to try to quell that and to respond to it. But I see no wavering in the strong support for that country in our country.
There are demonstrations almost every weekend, left-wing demonstrations against the occupation. But most Israelis are marching to the right. A recent poll in Israel's largest newspaper shows that over 50% of Israelis favor population transfer as the preferred solution. That means moving the Palestinians out of the territories. A fantasy more than a viable option, perhaps, but an indication of what Israelis think about coexistence. An answer to the Palestinian question.
Are they willing to coexist peacefully for good with us,
or it will turn to be Belfast forever.
Shades of Belfast are already descending, barriers between peoples. Before the uprising, West Bank towns like Kalkilia were swarming with Israeli shoppers. That's finished.
Well, they're frightened to come.
And fewer foreign visitors are coming to Israel. Hotels are half full, airlines are flying in fewer planes, and Israelis are spending more time in the army. Annual reserve duty has just been increased from 46 to 62 days. Old questions are being asked with a new desperation.
Are we ever going to be able to live in peace? Is this country ever going to be able to live in peace beside our Palestinian neighbors, no matter what we do?
The uprising is spoken of largely in the past tense now, but today, the Israeli-appointed mayor of a West Bank town was stabbed and critically injured in broad daylight. This week, a Palestinian boy shot dead by soldiers was buried in his village, and a school in Hebron became a battleground. The daily conflict is not an event anymore. It's part of the landscape. It is the new Israel. Bob Simon, CBS News, on the West Bank.
In South Africa, labor unions said millions of blacks stayed away from schools and workplaces on this second day of a planned three-day strike. Police said 8 blacks were killed in scattered acts of violence, not directly related to the strike. The Soviet government had a birthday gift today for the Russian Orthodox Church, which this year is celebrating its millennium. The communist government returned part of a monastery in Kiev that's one of the church's holiest shrines. It stands on the banks of a river where the first Russian Christians were baptized 1,000 years ago.
It's the best-selling vehicle of its kind in the country. Probably because it's beautiful to look at and exciting to drive. Rare qualities in a car, and even rarer in a wagon.
Winning the world over. You're winning. Have you been behind the wheel? Winning the world over.
Now get a $600 cash bonus on Ford Taurus.
Something unexpected will tear Peggy Moore away from her gardening. Pain. Her body's not as limber as it used to be, and even a simple move can slow her down. That's why her next move is to Metaprin. Metaprin has the same medicine as Motrin, and nothing's proven faster for relief of back pain or any kind of pain. It's also gentler to your stomach than aspirin. Metaprin works fast when you haven't got time for the pain.
Dear John, I have a new love, so sweet, so rich. New chocolatey Black Forest cake from Weight Watchers. Dreamy cherries, creamy topping. I've gone for more. Lovely.
We love visiting America.
Hot dog, fried chicken, pizza.
Buzz, we're glad you have Kaopectate.
Kaopectate.
New maximum strength Kaopectate tablets. Nothing relieves diarrhea and cramps faster.
The diarrhea specialist.
Major dress rehearsal today for the resumption of space shuttle flights, a mock countdown, launch, and simulated emergency landing to test hundreds of changes made in the shuttle program since Challenger exploded. A real launch for the Soviets today. Among other things, the cosmonaut team took up a space-age orchid, an orchid grown on Earth from seeds sent into orbit on an earlier flight. Scientists are warning about the rapid spread of a sometimes crippling disease that was unknown little more than a decade ago. The season for this disease runs from April through October, and it may be as close as your backyard. Richard Roth reports.
Karen and Tom Forshner's story could be called every parent's nightmare. Their toddler Jamie is almost 3, unable to walk or speak, but doctors now at least know what's wrong and have treated it.
Jamie, I love you.
When Jamie's health failed around the time these home videos were taken, his illness was a medical mystery. His parents spent 2 agonizing years trying to convince experts to treat him for a disease few had even heard about.
You lose hope. You lose hope that there's something you can do to save his life. It eats away at you every day.
The diagnosis, finally, was Lyme disease, a bacterial infection carried by the deer tick, no bigger than a pinhead. Its cause and effects were first identified in this rural Connecticut town 13 years ago. But suddenly this spring, Lyme disease is no longer a medical novelty. It's a national problem. Epidemic in parts of the East, but found in 33 states across the country. The 1,500 cases reported annually understate the problem, according to the doctor who discovered Lyme.
I suspect, though, that there are tens of thousands of new cases of Lyme disease each summer in this country now.
The tick bite may go unnoticed. There is a telltale skin rash, but many victims don't get it. Adults, children, even pets are susceptible, and while Lyme disease is curable with antibiotics, the symptoms make it one of medicine's great mimics, difficult to diagnose.
It resembles a lot of other diseases. It can resemble juvenile rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis, and the rash that is characteristic for the illness can be mistaken for other diseases.
And with a vaccine that's just under development, at least 5 years away, prevention depends solely on avoiding a risk that's as common as a suburban backyard. In Westchester County, New York City's backyard, they're spending more than $500,000 this year, the biggest budget in the country to control the tick that carries the disease and to tell residents how to avoid it.
By using repellents, by wearing light-colored clothing so that they can see ticks crawling on their clothing, and by tucking their pant cuffs down into the sock. You should be concerned, and you should be aware.
Spreading awareness about early detection of Lyme disease has become Karen Forshner's mission for her child. That and fighting despair.
I hope it turns out his hearing is normal. I hope he has normal eyesight. I hope that someday he'll be crawling and sitting and walking. I hope he doesn't die.
Simple hopes, and it didn't have to happen. Richard Roth, CBS News, New York.
A federally sponsored study released today found serious math deficiencies among the nation's young. The report looked at youngsters 9, 13, and 17 years old in 1985 and 86. It found only half the 17-year-olds could handle problems taught in junior high, with more than a quarter of them reporting they usually just didn't understand what was talked about in math class. Virtually none of the younger students and only 6% of the oldest could solve algebra problems.
Suddenly Salad proposes 3 exciting new leisure activities. Pasta primavera with broccoli.
Love those brand new pasta salad flavors.
Ranch and bacon.
Leisure activities I can savor.
And Caesar with croutons.
Suddenly Salad.
With tasty extras like real bacon, Parmesan cheese, and crunchy croutons. 3 delicious new leisure activities.
Suddenly Salad.
Live high.
Because Citicorp understands the drive to succeed, to do more than just get by, we've become the nation's largest financial services company, already helping 1 in every 5 American families, with more student loans, more home mortgages, more MasterCard and Visa cards than any other company. Citicorp and Citibank, we'd like you to get to know us better. Citicorp, because Americans want to succeed, not just survive.
Now for indigestion, gas. Introducing new Extra Strength Malox Plus. It neutralizes more than any leading antacid and dissolves gas. Nobody does as much as new Extra Strength Malox Plus.
You know, Canon's new personal zoom copier can magnify my image.
Or cut you down to size.
And Canon cartridges sure make it easy to maintain, which makes this PC7 the newest star in my family.
Guess you can't pick your relatives.
Personal copiers for every personality.
Glacier National Park rangers in Montana are baffled today over an attack by black bear, an animal usually timid around humans. Rangers shot and killed a 150-pound black bear last night when it reportedly went after 2 hikers. But correspondent Bob McNamara reports an even bigger concern in the West these days is the creature called the beast that walks like a man.
The spring usually comes slowly to northern Montana. But this spring, the snows on the Rockies' east face are fading already. There's a new crop of lambs on the Perkins Ranch, and a familiar problem's back early, too.
I wouldn't at all be surprised if there hasn't been a bear here in the last week or so checking out the boneyard.
Out of hibernation and the high country now, grizzly bears are being spotted, prowling ranches, hunting food, scaring people, and killing livestock as they've done before.
He killed 9, and then they
Just killed them.
They just kill them and pile them up. They don't.
He didn't eat them?
No, they just kill them.
Of all of America's endangered species, the grizzly is the most feared and revered. And the sight of the bears around Choteau, Montana again revives the feud between those wanting to keep the grizzly federally protected and those who don't. Rancher Bill Goss lost a calf to a grizzly this spring.
I think they should put it back like it used to be. If there's a bear come in causing problems, kill it and get rid of the problem.
Just why it is, after years of isolation in the mountains, that the bears are coming on down to the prairie is mostly a guessing game. And though the problem bears are still trapped, tranquilized, and moved from areas they've troubled, some anti-grizzly ranchers say there's a fuss-free way around that.
If a bear came here and if he had killed some stock or something and was out here, we'd shoot him and cover him up and say nothing.
I think that ranchers are just feeling and saying that frustration. I don't believe, however, that they're carrying that out.
Today, estimates are that perhaps 600 grizzlies now roam Montana's northern Rockies. So many, the state says it's not endangered.
The Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Department would like to see it delisted. We feel that there are real healthy indications that the grizzly bear population is at recovery.
But the bear's staunchest defenders don't buy that. Even in the face of criticism, they're unrealistic. Perhaps lucky for the grizzly, the laws and the lawyers defending it are almost as numerous as the bears. And they might need the help if the coming summer is one of continual conflict between bear and man. Bob McNamara, CBS News, Choteau, Montana.
And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. CBS News will have coverage of today's primary election results after the polls close, including a wrap-up after your late local news. Until then, Dan Rather.
Constipation is tough enough. Having hemorrhoids on top of constipation can twist you in knots. That's when you need MO. Haley's MO, the gentle laxative for hemorrhoid sufferers. Made with Phillips Milk of Magnesia, plus mineral oil. M-Hope. So while it relieves constipation, the mineral oil lubricates. And when you have sensitive hemorrhoids, that makes relief a lot easier. Haley's MO, the laxative for hemorrhoid sufferers.
Around here, breakfast time is like the playoffs. My goal is getting him to eat right. His game plan's a little different. So I give him Wheaties. It's full of good nutrition, not sugar. He's sweet enough.
Wheaties, 100% whole wheat, naturally low in sugar. That's champion nutrition for the whole family.
Victory.
It's birth control for roaches. Black Flag Roach Ender.
Other products kill, but survivors breed thousands more roaches. Roach Ender brand kills and sterilizes young survivors so they can't reproduce. Black Flag Roach Ender.
I just got dentures, but it hasn't slowed me down.
Sergeant, bit of 45, want to hear 45, 45.
Fixodent and forget it. Fixodent helps fix loose spots for a strong hold that lasts longer than any leading cream.
True, I hear 25, want to hear 25, 25.
Use Fixodent and forget it.
I'm Harry Smith.
And I'm Kathleen Sullivan. Tomorrow, Michael Dukakis and Jesse Jackson look ahead to the Democratic Convention.
Also, the return of the Great American Diner on CBS This Morning.
This is CBS.
Coming up next on Eyewitness News, an alternative to the mayor's huge property tax increase, but some say it's just not fair. We'll have a report.
And he's a big hit in Crockett County today, and residents say they will be happy to vote for him. And you'll meet some very unlikely country musicians.